right, well, in the essence of time, we're going to start. It's 5:31. So I want to welcome everyone to our third meeting of the New Bern Bike and Pedestrian Committee. And we're going to start with some introductions. I think we know everybody here, but for the public, if you would just go around the table. My name is Deanna Trouble. I am the Metropolitan Planning Organization Administrator, which means I just do long-range planning, and I'm the staff liaison for this committee.
I'm Jessie Rue. I'm the Director of Development Services.
George Childs, I'm the Director of Public Works.
And I'm Bob Brinson, Alderman for City of New Bern.
Mary Davidson, committee member.
Bill Sadler, committee member. Matt Clark, committee member.
All right, and welcome, and thank you for those that came out this evening. So we're going to start off with a public comment period. So if anyone would like to come to the podium, and you have about 3 minutes to address the board, and so we'll just open the floor now if anyone's interested in briefing anything related to this committee.
I could, just for a moment. I spoke briefly last time when we had the meeting.
Can you state your name, please?
Emily Zucker.
I live in Greenbrier.
I spoke briefly about our efforts in Emerald Isle to have a bike and pedestrian path, which was very successful. One of the things that happened with it, and I don't know if this could be done with mingling funds, but we had a lot of public support and donations. We raised funds with events, sales, and then we had a big board which had businesses and individual folks, names on them, and their level of donation too. And it raised a lot of money toward this very same project. So I don't know whether you could do that in a city like New Bern, but if you could, it's a way to get people involved and excited about it and also get more money.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Noah Sawney. I actually spoke with you, Deanna, at one point. Really glad to be able to come out here and see what you guys are working on. I live maybe about halfway between James City and Havelock, so if you guys know where that Toyota dealership is right there. And maybe needless to say, there's just about no sidewalk over there. And so I'm really, I guess I'll say my dream here is to get a connection between New Bern and Cherry Point where I work. I'll be selfish and say my goal would be to bike to work. It would be great. But I know a lot of other people on campus at Cherry Point that have the same mentality. You know, they just want to be able to get to work by other means. And so I'm really excited to see what you guys are up to, and I'm here to help. Is there anything I can do? Get Cherry Point involved, just get the community over there involved. I'd really like to be able to do that. So thanks for having me here today.
Thank you.
Anyone else interested in public comment? Okay, we'll move on to the next item.
One of the things I wanted to bring up, Mr. Bill Hand, one of our committee members, reached out to the clerk and myself, and he said that he was going to miss most of the meetings this year. And he had, if the board wanted, he would tender his resignation and we would have someone else come in. I did not want to make that decision, and I didn't really feel the necessary to take it to the Board of Aldermen to make that decision. So I wanted to bring it to you all and for you to consider if he's going to miss most of the meetings, would you rather have someone replace him? He certainly would still be involved, but he's not going to meet the meetings. And so he won't be able to receive the information or provide feedback to us. And so what I told him was I would leave it up to the other committee members to decide.
Should we just say how we feel?
Well, that's up to you five, including him, are the only voting members of this board.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, I am putting it in your court.
So I guess what I'm saying is, should we officially vote on this? Can we officially vote on this tonight?
You can, yes.
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, I was thinking it didn't have to be that formal,
No,
but it could
me
be.
neither.
it
That's
could
why I'm
be
saying,
that-
you want
it
to
could be
vote,
that
can I just say,
formal.
go for it?
I think a consensus
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
fine, but certainly I welcome your opinions
Mhm.
and your decision, I guess.
So did he have any particular affiliation that put him on this board, other than that he was just a member like the rest of us here?
Yes, he was somebody that volunteered to be on it, was a recreational runner, recreational biker, and because he was within the city limits as well, those were the three considerations we had for him to be put in.
Do you have people who wanted to be but were not chosen?
Yes, there were more applicants than the
Mm.
five of you.
Yeah.
And certainly if he was to vacate his seat, we would go back to those individuals, as well as those that have expressed interest since then.
Yeah. Has any of those individuals been at these meetings? The ones who were not chosen?
I know one of them has.
Because that would
Yeah,
show that they went
I would
above
have
and beyond. And that would-
I would have to go back and look at the application.
Yeah.
I really haven't been paying attention.
That would be a choice for me, though, with someone who actually wasn't chosen but then showed up anyway. So,
I don't think so, but I'd have to check.
And he volunteered to submit a letter of resignation.
He volunteered to submit one, but I thought I would ask you folks first if that would be appropriate to go back to him and say yes, or you were willing to continue with him.
I think it's appropriate to go back to him and say, we'll accept his resignation.
Okay.
I would concur with that.
Okay, so that's the word, okay. I will do that then, and then we will take a look at the other applications, and of course, it'll be a Board of Alderman appointment, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess for the TV, we have, once he resigns, we'll have another opening that we will.
Right. And so will you continue to take applicants, because maybe some of these
Yes.
people here
No,
tonight would like to?
absolutely, absolutely.
And that would
Those
be
go
wonderful.
through Brenda, our clerk at the city of New Bern. It's also on the website. You can go on there for volunteer boards and submit an application.
Super.
I would say that the board may want to consider looking at somebody with some running experience, because when I look here, I see 3 cyclists.
Mhm.
Right.
I run too,
You run Saturday.
but doesn't matter. Or
I'm just
whatever.
saying that.
Yeah,
Understand?
yeah.
We might know somebody.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate with him. He was a recreational runner, and that was one of the considerations. But we'll certainly go back and look at the previous applicants and any new ones that have come in, and we'll make an appropriate recommendation to the Board of Aldermen for replacement.
Super, thank you.
All right, wonderful.
It's kind of lonely over here.
All right, so moving on to the next item is the approval of the November 6, 2023 minutes. The minutes were provided with your packet, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion in a second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, wonderful. All right, so this evening I wanted to talk about we've been spending the last couple of meetings kind of educating you of the plan. We've talked about some things that we could work on for definitions, etc. And so one of the items that we talked about was the need for safety. Kind of the overarching theme over the last couple of meetings is we need to look at safety. So I wanted to talk about what a bicycle and pedestrian safety campaign is. So a safety campaign normally has 3 elements. You have like the plan side, then you have design, and then implementation. So the plan is establishing your goals and objectives. You tend to have a safety analysis piece to that, so you're looking at a specific location that is known for accidents or crashes. And then you're looking at your 5 E's. So you have engagement. How do we engage the public to make them aware of this campaign? You have the education piece of sharing with them the rules of the road, how do a bicycle and a runner and a car safely use that same lane. We also have enforcement, so we have that piece with our police department and sheriffs. We've got engineering, and engineering is more of like the hardscape improvement. So think of that as like a curb ramp or a bike lane that's actually marked, or a crosswalk. And then you have equity, so making sure that we're looking at the whole city and not just a section, a specific section. And then you're looking at strategies and some project ideas. So maybe you know that you want to see some improvement in a particular location. So we gather all this data, and that formulates the plan. And then from the plan, we move on to design, and that's where we get a little bit more specific. So we might be looking at prioritizing some of those project ideas. We might take one of those ideas and say, we want to move that towards a design. So we're going more from a concept to a reality. What would it look like if we were actually going to make that improvement? It could be as simple as creating a website where we're showcasing how the rules of the road and where do you get information. With that, it could be education materials. And this could, the range of from elementary to adults. And then most importantly is giving resources, giving them the general statutes, sharing other resources from other safety campaigns, etc. And then the last is the implementation. And a lot of people think of implementation as construction, and yes, that does include that, but it's also maybe taking that idea that we have a design and coming up with a funding strategy. That sounds great, let's move forward with this, but how are we going to get that funded? It might be events where we might be doing like a bike rodeo where we partner with the recreation department and we put together a bike safety, or we might go after a grant for bike helmets and we kind of tie that in with a safety component. And then most importantly, they always have some part of an evaluation. How do we know that these projects that we've identified are actually safe, that we're seeing a reduction in crashes, a reduction in incidents, etc. Now, the bicycle and pedestrian safety campaigns run the gamut. You could have a very, very formalized plan that has very specific performance measures, or it could be as simple as Wilmington's Be a Looker campaign. Be a Looker campaign is one that's put on through their Go Coast, which is a bicycle coalition, and what they do is it's just a website basically with all the content. So it has training materials, education materials, and then they partnered with their downtown businesses, and they have like a pledge card. So you have like a QR code, and your residents will sign it. It's all digital. It's very low key. You have the Watch for Me, which I think most of us are familiar with NCDOT's program that they put out, and with that they have educational materials and knickknacks that they give out through grant recipients. And then there's another arm called Let's Go NC. That has a lot of educational materials. Like think of it like coloring for the elementary kids, or a 2-page handout, but it's directed towards elementary, not necessarily adults. And then the Outer Banks has a bicycle and pedestrian safety coalition, which is similar to that really big, robust website with education materials, etc. So the point of this is the safety campaign can be whatever we want it to be. So with that, there are grants available, not only to do your safety campaigns, but also to do implementation. So we have federal and state grants. There are some private grants. Almost all of these require at least a 20% cash match. And so the downfall of this is that most of these grants focus on planning and design work and not construction. So we tend to have lots of plans, but then actually implementing the plan is a little more difficult. So one federal grant that is available, it's called Safe Streets for All, or SS4A. So this federal grant helps communities develop tools to strengthen their approach to pedestrian safety. So think of it like implementing the complete streets design. So we learned what that is, how do you share the road with all users. But in order to have the funding for the implementation side, you have to have what's called a comprehensive safety action plan. And so the other downfall of that is that you have to evaluate whatever you implement, you have to evaluate over the period of performance, which is typically about 5 years for implementation grant. So that means throughout the 5 years of that period of performance, we're having to do objective performance measures to indicate that whatever we constructed, we are seeing a reduction in pedestrian crashes, near misses, etc. So there's 2 grants for the SS4A. There's the planning and demonstration grant, and so that allows you to develop an action plan. And so think of it like it's similar to what we've done with the New Bern Bike and Ped plan, but not quite. But you could do a road safety audit. We could update that plan. We could also carry out demonstration activities like a feasibility study, or a pilot program to modify behaviors. So if we're seeing a high crash rate, let's say at night, with teenagers on their phones, then we could do some type of safety campaign to explain why they shouldn't be doing that, in hopes that as a result the behavior changes and then the safety increases because we're not having those crashes. So on the planning side, the minimum is 100,000 and the maximum is 10 million. So these type of projects are like big, and they're meant for run the gamut of the size of the municipality or state that you're utilizing. So again, this is just for planning. So if we took our existing New Bern Bike and Ped plan and we compared it to the framework of Safe Streets for All, the darker the color means that it meets that requirement, and if it's the lighter the color means that we're lacking in it. So if we wanted to compete for the planning grant, we could go after it to update or modify the existing New Bern plan. And you can see where we have some of these items that we've taken or were great, others not so much. So for instance, like the planning structure where we're 100% on that, because one of the requirements is creating a committee or a board to oversee the plan. So we get full credit for that. Same thing with equity, that we've looked at the entire city. We just need to probably look at it in a little bit more detail. We talked about policy and process change. The plan itself identifies where we need to make some changes to our code. So I think that if we wanted to go after that type of grant, this is an option that we could pursue. Again, if we were able to get a comprehensive safety plan, then we're now eligible to do the implementation grant of the same grant. So on the implementation side, which would be the hardscape improvements, like the corridor improvements, roadway, LED streetlights, or grade separate. I mean, this is big projects. And that would get us through planning, design, and implementation. We can bundle it, which means we can combine it with upgrading the plan with the construction. Now you'll see here the minimum for this is $2.5 million. So we're talking big projects up to $25 million. So this is an option if we wanted to use this grant. I'm not saying we have to, I'm just saying that this is an opportunity. So this grant right now does require an 80% federal and a 20% local match for whatever we go after. The 20% local match can be cash or what's called in-kind. In-kind is something like staff's time. So we would just have to document the staff's time so we could drive that 20% down a little bit. The next grant cycle for this opens in February. And it's normally open for a couple of months, and then the cycle will start again in next year. If the board is not interested in pursuing the grant, NCDOT has stated that they have some money available for us to do a comprehensive plan. And I believe, but don't quote me, but that might be 100% at their cost. I'm not positive. But that is an opportunity that we could take the plan, update the plan, and so now that we have a plan, and then we could still go after the implementation grant if that's something we want to pursue at a later date. And so one of these that my thought was if we updated the existing plan and now it's eligible for this federal funding, that at some point we could compete for the News Boulevard corridor, which is the highest pedestrian crash rate. It is a vulnerable user corridor that needs improvement, and DOT is aware of it. So this might be an opportunity to partner with them, and maybe they would go after the federal grant, and then they could put the 20%. So that's a strategy we could talk about. So I just want to pause for one moment. I know I've said a lot about safe streets, but I did want to bring this opportunity for the board for discussion.
Where's the gap between where our plant, relatively new plant is and where it needs to be that requires an update?
So if you wanted to,
The two things.
yes, so the darker red means we're in compliance. And now I just want to caveat, this is me just kind of looking at the plan and looking at the requirement. So we would have to get all the pink to red.
So you gave us examples of why the planning and structure was complete red and the equity was complete red. Give us some steps that we would need to get all the others in the complete red.
All right, let's see. Let's see. So safety analysis. So the safety analysis says, safety analysis of the existing conditions and the historical trends that provide a baseline level of crashes involving fatalities and serious injuries across a jurisdiction, locality, tribe, or region. When you look at our plan is focused primarily in downtown, and then there's like other pots. It didn't look at it as a holistic as the entire city. And so we do have some of that, but not a lot. And so I think that's where we're going to need to have modify the plan just to add more data to it. So another example would be the engagement and collaboration. So it states that you have to have public and relevant stakeholders, including the private sector and community groups, that allow for both community representation and feedback. So we did do some outreach, but I think we could have done more, asking for specific projects, etc. So that's why I said I think we've done a little bit, but we probably need to do a little bit more. So again, this was just me looking at the definitions and looking at the plan. So just my opinion, but we are definitely do not meet the definition of a comprehensive safety plan. And I will point out that when you fill out the grant, you are certifying that your plan meets these requirements.
Right. So why are we have no color in the progress and transparency methods?
So on that one, so it says, we assess the current policies, plans, guidelines, and/or standards to identify opportunities to improve how processes prioritize transportation safety. So we've identified some of it, but it doesn't tie it back specifically to the safety component. We talked about how we can get safe by modifying our plans, but we didn't talk about specific improvements to a location that has been identified as needing to be improved. We talked more about where we would like to see sidewalks and crosswalks, but we didn't tie it back to that safety piece.
Okay. Do you think that any data from the public, because we have, one of these sheets shows all the crashes and whether it was fatal or what. How about data of people who actually won't go out and use these areas because they fear for their safety?
Yes.
So that is probably a lot of people. That
Yes.
Do we have that in here somewhere?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
no.
okay.
And I think that's where
important
some of that
information.
engagement could come
Yeah.
from, that you would use it if.
Right, yeah. I had more, but I don't want to hog the stage here.
No,
You're doing good.
Okay, when you say that the grant opens in February, so
Yes.
how long does it stay open? For
It's normally a couple of months.
Couple of months?
Yeah,
And then closes, and then it's not open again until next year?
correct.
Okay, okay.
So again, we've got a couple of options. If we wanted to go for the grant, then we would have to go to the Board of Aldermen, and we would be very hard pressed time-wise to
Yeah.
go and get that approved, et cetera, which we can certainly, if that's this board's desire, we can make that happen. But if we're more interested in updating the existing plan for it to be compatible for a comprehensive safety plan, again, the only reason we would need that is if some point we wanted to go after this funding. I can circle back with NCDOT, and verify that, that money is still available and that it would not cost us anything. So again, the plan we have is good. We only need to make the changes if we wanted to go after some big money. But that big money does require some cash. And that's what I think, and that's the funding strategy piece that I wanted to talk about next.
Yeah. Now, could we go after the big money the next?
Oh, yes,
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 right.
yes.
So maybe it's a little too early for this year, but definitely make sure that we're on target for the future years.
Yes.
But before we go to DOT that request money, we need to make up our mind whether we want to go for the big money. Is that what you said?
Yes. So one of the pieces about the comprehensive safety plan is that evaluation piece, where we have to document that these improvements are driving down or eliminating the safety component. It is a lot of work. I don't know if it's worth it, to be honest with you, but that's one of the caveats. If you want their money, then you have to report the end goal of the safety benefits. If we're working with NCDOT, then they could possibly do all that work for us, and then we could just benefit from it. But I wanted to bring the grant before the board for discussion and guidance.
I'd like to ask this lady who is down in, what's the coastal town, I'm sorry? Emerald Isle. Do you know how much that costs? And the
Well-
mileage on that?
Well, one of the roads, which was Coast Guard Road, was the town paid for that. And then Emerald Drive, which was the total length of the town.
Yeah.
It was DOT. So
Okay.
it was two different things.
Right, so do you know, like the bike path, the bike route, that's the entire town, do you know how much that costs regardless if we pay for it? No. No, okay.
I was just thinking, we just briefed last meeting, and I don't remember.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the minutes from the last meeting, and the first 6 miles of the trail were constructed with the grant and local match from the town, and the remaining sections were funded by a 1-cent tax increase that began in 2012. And then they used events to help supplement and make maintenance of the trail.
But we still don't have a figure, right?
No, but I can certainly get a cost per.
It just would be very interesting to see how many miles you can get per million.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're talking about cost per linear foot of sidewalk, it's very difficult to take one such as Emerald Isle that may have appropriate right of way that didn't require any acquisition of land. You have very few obstacles. You've got soils that take up water. You don't have as many drainage issues. And then take that linear foot cost and transfer it to somewhere in the city limits. And just so be considerate of those dollar to dollar look at per linear foot.
I totally get that. It'd just be nice to have something that we could look at.
Yep. All right, any other thoughts on the comprehensive safety plan? Or guidance of what would the board, what would you like us to do?
That was a lot to eat.
Somewhere along the way, if you're going to do anything major, you're going to have money. The way I kind of interpret what's been said, if you want to go after the money, the first thing you got to do is turn this red.
If you want to pursue this federal grant, yes.
Right.
But there are other options that we talked about last meeting, where once, there are other grants that are available. We can go through the NCDOT's prioritization process. So there are other things we do, and NCDOT does have the highway safety funds. So if there's a known crash area, then they've got some funds that they can use to make some improvements, typically at an intersection. But if you want to construct, a trail or a sidewalk, then yes, that typically is going to have to come through a grant of some sort or private development.
So I think this is too big for this February. What do you guys think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Of course, the main thing is, if we decide we wanted to go for it, we got to turn that red, and that's not going to be done overnight.
No.
And then you're saying, though, you think we could get NCDOT to help us with that?
I believe, when I spoke with the gentleman a few months ago, they said they had some funding available, but I don't know if that required a match. So let me circle back. How about I do that? I'll circle back with NCDOT and see if that funding is still available, and I'll get the specifics on what we need to do to maybe just update our plan to make it a comprehensive safety plan. Does that work for the board?
I think so, because somewhere along the way, like I said, if we're going to do anything major, we're going to have money. And
I have a question. The organization People for Bikes, do they assist with funding, helping you acquire funding?
They identify funding sources, but not necessarily actually the
Okay.
funding to construct anything.
Are they a resource we could use?
Yes, yeah, that, we can definitely reach out to them. And I have been looking for other grant opportunities, if we wanted to construct something, but I haven't really found one yet that would make, well, then we don't really have a priority either that the board has given us as far as the location that we wanted to focus on. So I think that's my next question at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so I need to get something straight. So this is, what is the plan, the name of the plan that was 100,000 to, what, 10 million? I forget.
Oh, the first one?
Yes.
So there's two arms of the Safe Streets for All. The first one is planning and implementation, or I'm sorry, planning and demonstrating projects. And that is coming up with a plan, modifying plan, or doing a short-term like feasibility study on one particular area. So that is 100,000 up to 10 million. And then the other side is the actual, you're going to construct or implement something that's identified in the plan.
So I guess my question is, we would apply for this grant to update our plan?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a two-step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said we need to pick a project?
Yes. So we've been talking the last couple of meetings, the staff's been educating the board about terminology and, answering questions that you might have. But in order for us to continue having effective meetings is we need guidance from you on what you want us to look at. So if the guidance from the board is we want to work on a comprehensive safety plan, then that would, and with that, maybe work on a website to, at a bare minimum, just start putting some of this data out there for the public, education materials, etc., then we can start working on that. But we need guidance from you on what you would like to see. If that's not your priority and you would like us to start looking at the specifics of how do we get a sidewalk from A to Z, and that means how do we go about finding grants and what does it take to get, how much does it cost, and so we just need guidance from you of what you would like us to focus on.
So I have two thoughts. One is, definitely, I think we should, again, do what Emerald Isle did. I use that bike trail a lot.
Well, hold that thought, because that's part of the conversation on the funding strategy.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
then I'll hold that. The second thing thought I have is, if you're asking for specific areas, I can narrow it down to Moose Boulevard is the only thing I want to concentrate on. I certainly will concentrate on everything else, but that's, to me, the most important thing in this book, and I'd like to focus on it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned it, so Moose Boulevard is an area that NCDOT is already working on. They're doing a vulnerable user study or assessment. So they're looking at it basically from Racetrack Road all the way to Broad Street, I think. And so they're looking, we actually walked, we were out there for several hours. We walked the entire limits and notating where we saw people crossing, areas of improvement. And we sit next week where we get the draft analysis of what improvements need to be made. But that's the whole point of that, is they now have a study that they can turn around and go back to the Highway Safety Fund and get money to make improvements. So you'll be seeing some pedestrian accommodations happening, like the push buttons and crosswalks. They've already identified several intersections along that corridor, but it's more than that, is how do we continue making this safe? So I don't have that draft report yet, but I'll have some more information to share with the board at the next meeting. So they're already working on that one.
Okay, so from Racetrack Road up to, what is the industry that's?
Bosch.
Yeah, isn't there something going on there too?
I asked them to extend the study to Bosch.
Yeah,
And luckily when we were on site, there was people walking, so they said, yes, that makes sense.
yeah,
So they were supposed to include it up to Bosch.
Okay.
And we have had it, because the NPO has identified News Boulevard, that section from Bosch to MLK as needing improvements. That is on a submitted project where we are asking for improvements, not only to the roadway, but a sidewalk on one side and a trail on the other.
yeah, because with the amount of traffic that goes by, that goes to Bosch, if we could get them walking or biking to work and back,
Yes.
I bet you would. That
And-
would be
and-
awesome.
And Bosch did do a survey of their employees, talking about basic, what would it take for you to walk or bike to work? And that study was very informative for them. And it also kind of shared with us that there is a need and a desire to make that connection. So we're working on it, it's just not right this minute.
So let me ask this question. The proposal you had on the implementation grant possibly was News Boulevard. So if we were to use this planning grant to update the bike and pedestrian plan and the comprehensive safety portion of that, and then looking at the implementation grant, would that be helpful for NCDOT, or are we duplicating effort now on News Boulevard for NCDOT? I guess, you said
Yes.
everything that's going on with
Yep.
NCDOT and News Boulevard right now. Is this duplication of effort or not, I guess? Or is it helpful?
If we were doing the plan just because of news, I would say it would be a duplicate effort.
Okay.
Because we could probably take what they've done and include it in our plan,
Okay.
specifically for news.
But by going for this planning grant to update the comprehensive safety plan in ours, it would include much more than just News Boulevard, and would have the entire city.
Yes.
And then we could have a prioritization of the safety projects that we would like to look at in the
Yes.
implementation. And then we could decide whether NCDOT needs the help with the implementation grant for News Boulevard, or we could pick other projects. So that's what we're.
Correct.
Okay. This one.
So
It can get confusing.
what I'm hearing is that we're not going after the Safe Street grants now, that I'm going to contact DOT and see if there's still funding available for them to help us with taking our current plan and making it a comprehensive safety plan. And then I'll report back with more information. Does that sound like a good first step at least for that?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so like I mentioned, all grants require some type of a match. And I think it's important that when we go after grants that we're very mindful of that, because although you're getting 80% of funding through the federal government, it still does require that 20% match. So one of the things that this board could do is be our advocate. So one item would be to establish through the budget process with New Bern is to create that local match requirement, right? So that as the city of New Bern, the Board of Aldermen is budgeting for their annual budget, that you're asking them to go ahead and just put some money to the side. And so when the federal grant or a grant becomes available and you're looking for that match already has some money in it. So it might not be enough, but at least it's a start. And that money could just be a pot that we kind of add to every budget cycle. Another option might be to establish a tax like Emerald Isle did. There was a small tax that that everyone paid for, but a penny is a lot on the tax. You could host events to benefit a specific project, which is what Emerald Isle did. Emerald Isle they built part of their trail, and now they have a marathon that people go out there, and that gets a lot of money, not only for them to do more trails, but to reinvest in the trail that they have for maintenance. We could seek pledges from commercial businesses who maybe Bosch, who is interested in seeing this a trail come or a sidewalk, that we could ask them to make a financial commitment. We could also establish Friends of the Trail, right, which is kind of what we have here, but Friends of the Trails are normally a nonprofit organization where they're able to collect some big dollars, donations, and then they could partner with the city to actually construct trails. So these are just some funding options that I came up with. I'm not sure if maybe the board has any other suggestions on potential funding options.
How much kickback you gonna get if you raise taxes, even 1% or whatever? The whole thing is, to do that, the public's gotta be educated on what we're doing.
Correct.
If they see that by getting all this stuff, it's gonna decrease them having to ride around cyclists and all, maybe they'll do it, but.
Or there's definitely an education component to all of this. And these are just Deanna's thoughts. Just want to caveat that in looking at how other municipalities were successful in getting funding for their trails, outside of just coming from the municipal reserves, these are the items that I was able to find. But yes, education is definitely a piece.
I wondered if you picked a neighborhood that was it wouldn't have to be the farthest out, but maybe an easy one to implement a plan, and you could chart how many more pedestrian cyclists you got to come into New Bern. And the aldermen could see that and see the effectiveness, if that would help educate them long-term to the viability of this. And I'm just going to pick a neighborhood, I don't live there, but Riverside, or one of the early subway neighborhoods of New Bern that are far away but close enough that you could implement, that people would say, gosh, there's a path all the way downtown. The whole family can ride our bike downtown and do whatever.
You know, we had a route years ago from that.
Yeah.
It was a bicycle wheel type thing.
That's
Everything
right.
came into New Bern.
Yeah.
And they had the signs up, and all the signs are gone. That was years ago. That was back in the early 70s. I was on one of the committees then.
I can kind of give you my opinion on the first two anyway. We are already having discussions, and we'll have discussions in our budget workshop where we're talking about the money that was left over from the previous year in the general fund, setting it aside for capital improvement. So if we were to do that, I would argue with the alderman that, the money that we've set aside for capital improvements could be used for local matches. So I think I can reasonably say we're already having the discussion on the first one. The second one, I would be very hard pressed to, as important as bikes and bikeways and sidewalks are important to me, I'd be hard pressed to pass a tax. I mean, in our last budget, we didn't raise taxes to pay for an employee raise. We actually took it out of fund balance. And so I don't think this board is willing to raise taxes for that. I'm just speaking for myself, just kind of reading the room, but,
Well, anytime you talk about raising taxes, then if you're the person making the decision, you got to weigh a lot of things on your mind.
right.
Before you say yes or no.
Yeah, and so we took the employee raise out of fund balance rather than raise taxes. So I think it would be a hard sell for a tax raise to build sidewalks and bike lanes. But like I said, the first one, we're already having discussions on. And so I think I could argue, if we establish that precedent where we take what's left over at the end of the year that we didn't spend and put it in a capital improvement fund, which is what we're talking about, then I could argue that, hey, you can use that as a local match for these capital improvements. So,
How much do you think you'd have to argue?
not very much.
Do we need to do anything to help you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'll let you know.
All right.
I mean, because, the budget workshops have not started yet. But it wouldn't be just for local matches. I mean, that goes towards, the capital improvements could be vehicles, it could be buildings, it could be any of that. But certainly it's very easy to make the argument of an 80-20 match that, hey, we're getting 80%, all we've got to do is put up the 20, and we would have this fund already if we establish it. So, I mean, like I said, we'll see what the board decides, but I'm all for that. The second one, not so much.
I've also specifically mentioned in conversations recently as this morning that we would like a line item, so we had money specifically available when things came up. So
Yeah.
that was in a match for this committee.
Yeah.
And so Foster's having that conversation
Okay.
with our finance director. So, of course, if we see that line reflected and created in the budget, we would love, when it came time to adopt the budget, that you came and supported that new line
Yeah.
for the great work and the time we're putting into this. So,
Okay.
we're not quite at that step yet, but I do think we will see. I don't know if it'll be the kind of money that we would like or that would be completely useful if there was a big 20%, but I planted that seed that this is important, there's good work going on, and we'd like to have funds available for when she finds these opportunities that she's very good at finding.
Yeah.
So we have that match money available.
Right. Well,
So
thanks for the heads up.
For grants, I need to be educated because I've never worked with grants before. And so if we come up with a certain amount of money, that could be 20% of 100,000, it could be 20% of 10 million, but do we have to say we want 2 million and have to match it, or do we get whatever we have come up with?
So it really depends. So normally, every federal grant or every grant has a floor and a ceiling, meaning the minimum you can size of the project to the maximum size. So in that planning grant that we had, the implementation, which was 100,000, if we had a plan that only required the cost was going to be 50,000, then we could not apply for that grant because we needed 100,000 as the minimum. So the best thing to do is when you're going after grants is that you have a list of projects already identified with a rough cost estimate of what that is. It's kind of already prioritized. So now you have your list, now staff knows what your priorities are, and then as the grants become available, we know number one priority is X. And we think based on this, it's going to cost, let's say $1 million, and that we would know that if we wanted to apply for that grant, we have to come up with that 20% match. So having all of that worked out ahead of time helps us so that when we go to the Board of Aldermen and ask for, can we submit for this grant, and we tell them we need, $200,000 for a grant, then they go, oh, okay. And normally what happens is the municipality will obligate those funds or encumber them so they're not spent for any other reason. And then as it's a reimbursement rate, so as the city of New Bern pays an invoice, they're going to pay 100% to the vendor, and then they go and seek reimbursement from the federal government for 80% of that cost. So It's not like we're giving the federal government 20% and then they're giving all the money back to us. So it is a tedious process, but you can be creative. Sometimes you can use different funding sources. So if we had some private money with federal money and some city money, sometimes you can get 2 federal funding sources and you can combine them. That's rare, but you can. So it's just a matter of identifying what the priorities are so that we can be prepared for when the grant presents itself.
So you said News Boulevard is, the state is going to be doing that.
So they're doing a planning study to identify what can be done to improve the safety along News Boulevard.
And then what they decide that they're not going to do, and then we would have to be responsible for what we
No.
want? Over and
Want
above?
versus need, yes. So if it's anything above and beyond what DOT has acknowledged, then yes, that would be at the
Okay.
city's expense.
Okay, so there is a good chance we wouldn't have to pay for any of that?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yes.
The thing I wanted to point out about News Boulevard is News Boulevard is owned by NCDOT,
Mhm.
not the city of New Bern.
Yeah,
And
Correct.
so that's why it's having to go that way.
yeah, just that was my main focus, but I don't want to focus on something that, I mean, as far as getting money for something that is not going to happen. Someone else is going to do that, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
Might as well
what
change
we
our
would do in
focus.
looking at grants is that you would want to focus on city-owned
Mhm.
roads. That would be our, for this purpose, that's where we would focus our effort.
Yeah.
Now, we could also identify improvements on DOT roads, and that's just a different pot of money to work with DOT on. So we could run them concurrently, it's not one or all, you know. So anyway, so I just want to kind of summarize like the next steps. So sounded like we're in support of the creation of that revenue account that Jesse and Alderman Brinson had already mentioned. I'll reach out to NCDOT to talk about the 130. They have 130,000 to fund the comprehensive safety plan. And if this board wants, as an interim step, staff could start working on developing a website that would just complement on the city's website about some of the safety campaign initiatives, like how to share the road. When you ride your bike at night, you have to have your reflector and your lights, and so we can. That's a pretty easy lift as far as taking existing DOT information and putting it on the city's website. But really, the bottom line, it comes down to whatever the committee wants to focus on. We're here to support you and what your vision is for this committee.
Is anyone going to speak? So the funding, the 5 funding options that you were suggesting, I would like to focus on that.
Okay?
And I'd like to be pretty specific, and let's just get moving on it. So if we don't have to do anything for number 1, then I'll just wait for you to reach out to us. Should we just talk about this right now, or should we have some type of subcommittee or meeting? Establish a tax? What are you guys thinking?
Well, I understand where Bob's coming from on
Yeah.
that. I was thinking, if you had a referendum of some sort, and that would take the pressure off the alderman, but what's the odds that it would pass or not? I think I have to go along with Bob. You may not right this minute.
Yeah, I'm not
consider the tax.
interested in doing that either. I'm going to take some advice.
So maybe I should suggest this. What if, because we're still a relatively new committee, what if we have, staff can work on updating our website and to put information on there so the public can see that we're making some progress?
Absolutely.
Maybe a few of you could get together and come up with some ideas on how to advance this a little bit, or maybe talking about hosting some type of benefit, or even starting with a bike rodeo. The MPO actually received a grant for bike helmets, and we distributed those right before, beginning of December, and that was very successful. I think that would be a great opportunity for the city of New Bern to go after that grant again when it becomes available, and maybe we put it together with a much larger draw. You could get some community businesses to donate helmets. You could do bike repairs. I mean, there's so much more you could do, but that would lend some awareness to this committee. And maybe that would be the talking point for the next step of getting the financial commitments from the public. But that's just my suggestion.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I said, should we do this right now, or it seems like it could be very
Well, why don't we go and just maybe if you want to lead like a subcommittee?
Yeah, something, well, is it also, when we talk about events and seeking pledges and stuff, can we include the public? Like, everybody here who would like to help with this, then, is there some way we can get names of people that we could call
Yes.
and see when we could all meet and brainstorm, and can we use this room?
Sure. Yep. I've got everyone's name that when they've signed in for the last 3 meetings. And I would definitely talk with Carrie and have her come to the table too, because she's a great resource with recreation. But yeah, I can definitely share all that information with you.
Okay, thank you. And then certainly don't mind, just composing an email and were you the one who sent out that calendar where everyone shows their most important dates? And yes, that was wonderful. And I'm thinking, I'd like to use that.
Okay.
Because that way we can be respectful of as much as possible of people who work all day and have grandkids at night and et cetera.
Okay. Any other, so we have some action items where I'm doing a little bit of work, Mary's going to take the lead. Are there any specific projects that the board is interested in, staff kind of, I'm just trying to think, like, what's the next meeting going to look like? What do you guys want us to focus on or work towards?
Well, like I said, that's the reason why I say money, because money's going to help us a lot to decide how we're going to go for it. Do you have any idea of some steps that we should take other than, establishing some?
No, I think awareness is probably the next big step.
And that's the website.
Especially if you guys are wanting to do something big, like ask for money. But at one point, we definitely need to take this plan and identify where you want to focus your efforts on.
So you're talking the area of
Yes,
concern
ma'am.
at this
Yes.
point? Okay. So since I did have another one other than News Boulevard, but it was another crazy one. It was Oak Road. That was my the ones I use every day. And, but I know that's another hard one. It's not a simple, 20-foot sidewalk that needs to be reworked.
And I definitely agree that Oak Road is one of the key areas we should
Yeah.
be focusing on. When it does link Marietta Park with downtown New Bern.
Yeah.
But there again,
My thing is Trent Road, always has been Trent Road. That's the most well-traveled, highly traveled two-lane road in Craven County property.
I agree with you, Mac.
Huh?
I agree with
Yeah,
you.
and there's more cyclists going down that road than any road in New Bern.
And I'm willing to not, I don't need to have mine,
Yeah. And my thing is, you don't even need Mike lanes down. All you need to do is make it continuous, 3 lanes all the way down. And that's enough room. But this in and out stuff is dangerous. They start down, they try to pass a bike, and then the lane runs out. So they cut over. I mean, it's a turning lane, I know, but they use it for passing lanes.
So you
That's
said
dangerous.
Trent Road, is that?
Trent Road, yeah.
Does anyone else have anything, concern in the area?
Narrow.
Top 5.
Trent Road's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous. And that's the most well-traveled by cyclists and cars.
So would you be willing to give up Oaks for Trent, just so that we can all work on something?
that's fine, yeah.
Not only Trent
I
Road,
thought so.
Trent Road also ties in, if you want to think about it, ties in River Bend. Everybody coming to River Bend.
I just think the
Okay.
whole plan
Yeah,
is
Trent
awesome,
Woods,
so-
Southgate, all those are tied into that. They all use Trent Road.
Yeah.
That's the main corridor in the town on a bike.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So where does the area that is covered in this, is it just New Bern itself, or is it the outskirts of New Bern, like Bryce's Creek Road?
It is the corporate limits of the city of New Bern.
Okay,
It's the City of New Bern Board, so.
all right, yeah.
We can provide input to the MPO, which is the greater New Bern area, but.
Well, I just didn't know if it was like, if Bryce's Creek Road was considered part of the city of New Bern, or,
It's not,
okay.
it's not.
Because that's another road that gets trafficked very heavily by cyclists as well.
Yes, and that would be something for those that are interested in the areas outside of the city of New Bern, that when the MPO starts, we update our long-range plan. We're going to start that in July. That's the feedback that we need to put in that plan. That plan incorporates Bridgeton, Riverbend, Trentwoods, and the city of New Bern, and parts of Craven County. So that's where you need to be plugged in so we can hear your feedback on that.
Okay.
Does anyone know the page of Trent Road in the plan? No.
I was
I'll
gonna
find
say
it.
that,
I mean,
that
I'll
when,
find
when you're making the list, I would not try to limit yourself to those three roads, because those three roads we're aware of,
Yeah.
the same issues that you're facing. So y'all are the ones out on the streets riding bikes every day. You may have other areas, and even if it's a small improvement that could be made to one section, don't keep that off the list, because that may be something that we could take direct action to repair right now. So it's not, we wouldn't need a grant to fund, so
I see.
we're not
Oh,
funding
that's
what,
great.
you know,
That
I don't
makes sense.
ride a bike. I don't see some of the things you see every day, and there may be something small
Yeah.
that we could go ahead and address right away, as you make the list. But Oaks, Noose, and Trent, we're aware of the issues we're facing.
So is Trent as complicated as Oaks? Or Oak Road? Is it Oaks or Oak?
Oaks,
Oaks?
in differing manner.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are more environmental pressures on the Oaks Road section,
Right.
with creeks and Jack Smith and Randy's that you got to deal with.
Okay, so you asked us to find an area to focus on. Is that what we just did?
So you have the three, but yes, if you guys could look at other areas, like George just mentioned, so the three that you mentioned are really big ones.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but if you can find some
Okay.
smaller ones that maybe there's some infill sidewalk that needs to be put in.
Mhm.
And that just means that you've got sidewalk and then no sidewalk and then sidewalk. And that might be something George might be able to do relatively soon, like
Mhm.
within, versus these other ones are gonna take lots of planning
Right.
and years for us to actually come up with a solution.
Okay.
So, and we don't need those answers tonight, but
Yeah.
if you could just kind of be thinking of that, and that would help us trying to figure out a potential solution.
So I do know that last time we met, we talked about the walk from the park to the flashing walk sign, whatever it's too short.
Yes.
Yeah, and a bike rack outside of this building.
That's coming.
So those things are in the works? Was there anything else we mentioned? Seemed like there were three things that people mentioned. And, well, at least, okay, so thank you. And George said he would get on the timer thing, so.
Those types of things.
Yeah, see, that's why,
mean, that's-
I can come up with those
When we get
all day
immediate
long.
feedback at these meetings or things that we.
I got one thing I like with what Newbern is doing, all these new businesses open up and putting sidewalks in front of. Is there a map to show, so we can connect them together, or is they just waiting for another business to open up to fill in those blanks, or is the city gonna fill in those blanks?
When it's run in front of other private property, it's waiting, if there's a vacant parcel beside it, it would await the development of that piece, usually. As
They were tied in together, you had them all year.
So usually, but is there any reason why we can't?
Well, you'd have to go through eminent domain to take the property, probably.
Usually we try to place these in the right of way, even when it's
Right.
by development.
So
There are
there-
some circumstances where it doesn't work and we have easements through the process, but that's done during the development phase.
So if there's some that you have in mind, why don't you write them down, and we can see if there's any problems with them. And if there are no problems, we can
Yeah.
bring it up.
Like currently, we have at the end of Trent Road where it connects back to MLK, it's already funded to connect that sidewalk with a crosswalk in front of the dance studio and take it all the way down to Glen Burnie. So, I mean, those are the types of things that we are slowly trying to connect, all of that. But those of you that were in that area, that was the whole reason for cleaning that place out in order to put a bridge across,
Jimmy's
it's
Branch.
technically Jimmy's
Jimmy's
Branch,
Branch.
or right in front of the dance studio. So there are things that we are already working on in order to connect sidewalks. But if there are places where you would rather have a priority of connecting it sooner than some of these other places, we'd like to know that too.
And as we try to evaluate, at least in my department, we try to connect, if we are close to adjoining a piece that already ties in with the city system, that's where we're going to prioritize tying to the next station. We don't have intent to go out and connect two parcels that stand alone with sidewalks and aren't attached to anything. So, you know, as you say, we try to connect all the way. You can go all the way from Lawson Creek Park now to Pierce Ball Fields at National Cemetery. So that's our intent, to try to keep expanding this loop, or as you mentioned, even in the 70s, a wheel. But you know, that is our intent, to try to work our way to have a circumference around the town where people have pedestrian.
And George knows too, one of my long-term priorities is to tie in the city of New Bern sidewalks to the sidewalks that Trent Woods is putting in.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it's already being done on Country Club, that's kind of where we're focusing on. But when they come around to Chelsea, when they come around to Greenwood Cemetery Road, you know, we want to tie in to theirs as well. So that's a long-term plan, because they've got a long-term plan.
So another thing was listed, you were talking about private donations and that kind of thing. I was wondering if we could take a look at some of these projects that's identified in here and come up with a value, of cost. And I think some of that is identified.
Yes.
And then see if somebody like Bosch wanted to adopt a project or something along that line. So if we have some kind of,
Oh, great, then we should project in there. Okay, forget it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. I mean, that is something that, who knows?
And that's great.
Yeah,
If-
that's great.
If there's
To give it
certain
a shot.
projects
Yeah.
that you would like us to work on, we can. There'll be just budgeting numbers, but we could certainly work on a rough number, like really rough.
Yeah.
DOT's got a estimating tool for trails and sidewalks. So, but it wouldn't include, you know, right of way and all that, but it would give you at least an idea.
In some cases, you may have back to the grant thing, you could adopt a 20% match and then you get 80% or something like that. Some corporations might, the hospital, the hospital,
Yeah.
they should be a little interested in people's health.
Yeah, they will, I'm sure they will.
So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
You would like to maybe or send me an email to come up with your list of projects that you would like to look at funding, and we can certainly work on an estimate.
Okay, you want me to send you an email identifying the project or giving you, okay.
Yep, just give me the list of projects that you would like us to start working on the estimate, and I'll work on the estimate with the estimating tool to come up with rough budget numbers. At least it'll get us an idea when we talk about how much does it cost per linear foot.
Yeah. I do have to add though, I've lived in a lot of cities and New Bern is the best at actually following through on their projects. So I really want you to know that people notice and we really, really appreciate it. It's nice to see stuff done.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I know we're over time, but I just wanted to follow up. During the last meeting, the question was asked about the 4 feet rule. And so There is general statute 20-150 that, then this is when the cars can overtake a bicyclist, is that drivers may cross the double yellow line to pass like bicyclists where there is enough sight distance to do so, and that motorists allow at least 4 feet to the left, or the motorist completely enters the opposite lane to pass. So while this is the law, that sign that you see, I cannot find in what's called the, it's MUTCD, it's the municipal, I don't know, what is it, the manual, anyway, it's the, what is it, George? I see,
You said it wrong and you got me confused.
MUTCD.
It's a municipal uniform transportation code is what it is, and it gives you parameters for design and sign standards.
Yes. So this sign is not in that, which means DOT will not install it. But I did want to follow that, we did discuss this last time about the signs, and so I just wanted to report back.
There the education thing comes in, because most people do not know
Yes.
they're allowed to cross that line and be passed.
I didn't know until you guys mentioned it last meeting, and I was, oh.
And then you get people that sit back there, and the people behind them get tired of it, so they pass that car.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's unbelievable. The education, before you go anywhere else, has got to go.
And just as a reminder, our next meeting is March 4th. You should already have it on your calendars, but it'll be here at 5:30. And we all have a little bit of homework, so does anyone have any other thoughts or comments? All right, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And we stand adjourned.